Being broken is often misunderstood. We treat it like a verdict, a final judgment on our strength, our worth, or our future. But broken is not an identity, it is a moment in time. It is a chapter, and chapters exist to be turned. Every meaningful journey includes disruption. Nothing that grows remains untouched, and nothing that matters comes without cost. When something breaks inside us, it usually means we cared deeply, tried honestly, or risked fully. That alone separates those who live from those who merely exist. Breakage does not erase value. A cracked foundation does not mean the entire structure must collapse. It means attention is required. Yet many people stop at the crack. They freeze there, replaying the moment of impact, reliving the loss, the failure, the betrayal, or the disappointment. They mistake injury for defeat. But defeat is a decision, not a condition. You can be wounded and still be moving forward. You can be exhausted and still be progressing. The moment we understand that brokenness is temporary, we reclaim power over our story. History, personal or collective, is filled with examples of people who were broken long before they were celebrated. What we often call success is simply survival plus persistence over time. The world sees the outcome, but rarely acknowledges the fractures that made it possible. Those fractures force reflection. They slow us down long enough to ask better questions. What truly matters? What was illusion? What must change for me to continue? Without broken moments, those questions are easy to ignore. Being broken strips away pretenses. It removes the false confidence built on comfort and replaces it with something far more durable: earned strength. When life works, we operate on autopilot. When it breaks, we become intentional. We listen more closely to ourselves. We notice patterns we once dismissed. In that sense, brokenness is not an obstacle to growth, it is often the doorway to it. There is also courage in acknowledging brokenness. Pretending you are fine when you are not requires more energy than healing ever will. Admitting fracture is not weakness, it is clarity. It is the moment you stop wasting effort on denial and start investing energy in repair. And repair does not mean returning to who you were before. It means becoming someone who has seen reality more clearly and still chooses to move forward. When you view brokenness as a chapter, the pressure changes. A chapter can be heavy without being permanent. It can be dark without defining the entire book. You may not control when the chapter begins, but you do influence how it shapes the next one. What you carry forward is not the break itself, but the insight, humility, and resilience it leaves behind. This shift in mindset is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" the question becomes, "What does this moment demand from me now?" That question restores agency. It turns pain into information. It reframes suffering as a signal rather than a sentence. In that reframing, the story continues, momentum quietly returns, and the idea of defeat slowly loses its grip. Pain is unavoidable. It arrives without invitation and often without explanation. What separates people is not how much pain they experience, but what they allow that pain to do to them. The same hardship can produce two entirely different outcomes. One person grows bitter, guarded, and resentful. Another grows wiser, stronger, and more aware. The difference is not luck, talent, or circumstance. It is interpretation. Pain is raw material. What you build from it depends on mindset. When pain hardens you, it closes you off. It teaches you to expect harm, to assume the worst, to keep emotional distance as a form of self-protection. Over time, this armor may feel like strength, but it quietly limits growth. Hardened pain resists reflection. It looks outward for blame and inward with shame. It says, "This shouldn't have happened," and stays there. In that state, pain becomes heavy baggage, dragged from moment to moment, influencing decisions long after the original wound has passed. Shaping pain, on the other hand, requires engagement. It means sitting with discomfort long enough to understand it, instead of rushing to escape it. Shaped pain asks questions instead of making accusations. What did this reveal about me? Where was I ignoring warning signs? What belief was challenged? These questions are not about self-criticism, they are about self-awareness. Awareness is the beginning of control. When you understand how pain affects you, it loses its ability to unconsciously drive your behavior. Pain that shapes you refines priorities. It forces honesty. It strips away what was superficial and highlights what is essential. Many people discover their real values only after something painful threatens to take them away. Pain clarifies what matters because it removes distractions. It makes time feel precious and energy worth protecting. In this way, pain becomes a teacher, not a gentle one, but an effective one. There is also discipline involved in shaping pain. Growth does not come automatically with suffering. Pain alone does not guarantee wisdom. Without intention, pain simply repeats itself in different forms. Shaping pain means choosing reflection over reaction. It means resisting the urge to numb, distract, or project. It means accepting responsibility for how you respond. Even when you are not responsible for what happened, that responsibility is not about blame, it is about ownership. When pain shapes you, empathy increases. You become more patient with others because you recognize silent battles. You listen more deeply because you know how easily pain can be hidden. Strength becomes quieter, less performative, more grounded. Confidence shifts from proving yourself to trusting yourself. This kind of strength does not need validation because it has been tested internally. The hardest part of shaping pain is time. It does not happen quickly, and it rarely feels productive in the moment. There are days when growth looks like standing still, like simply not giving up, like choosing restraint instead of retaliation. Those moments rarely feel victorious, yet they are where character is built. Pain reshapes thinking before it reshapes outcomes. Every painful experience presents a crossroads. One path leads to rigidity, defensiveness, and repetition. The other leads to depth, flexibility, and evolution. The pain itself does not decide the direction. The decision is made in small, often invisible choices. How you speak to yourself, how you interpret events, how willing you are to learn from what hurt you. Resilience is often misunderstood as something dramatic, standing tall after a major victory, or making a bold comeback that everyone applauds. In reality, resilience is far less visible and far more ordinary. It is built in the quiet moments, in the spaces where no one is watching, where effort goes unnoticed, and where quitting would be easy and understandable. These moments rarely feel heroic, yet they are the true foundation of long-term strength. The quiet moments are the ones filled with internal dialogue. They happen when motivation fades and discipline has to take over, when there is no immediate reward, no encouragement, no applause, only a choice. Do I continue or do I stop? Resilience is not the absence of doubt in those moments. It is the decision to move forward despite doubt. It is choosing consistency over comfort, especially when comfort feels deserved. Most people associate resilience with recovery after failure, but it begins much earlier. It is formed in preparation, in repetition, in routine. It grows when you show up on ordinary days, not just crisis days. When you honor commitments you made to yourself, even when no external pressure exists, you reinforce trust in your own word. That trust becomes emotional muscle. Over time, it allows you to face bigger challenges without collapsing under them. The quiet moments are also where excuses are born, and where they must be confronted. No one challenges them for you. There is no audience to impress, no reputation to defend. It is just you and the truth of your effort. Resilience requires honesty in these moments. Honest acknowledgement of fatigue, fear, and frustration, without letting them dictate your behavior. Suppressing emotions is not resilience, managing them is. There is a loneliness to quiet resilience. Progress can feel slow and invisible. You may question whether your effort matters, whether anyone will notice, whether the outcome will justify the struggle. This uncertainty is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is part of the process. Resilient people learn to detach effort from immediate results. They focus on what they can control: showing up, improving slightly, staying engaged. In these quiet moments, resilience also reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries when conditions are favorable and start seeing yourself as someone who continues regardless of conditions. That shift is subtle but powerful. It changes how you interpret obstacles. Challenges become expected rather than shocking. Setbacks become information rather than insults. This mental reframing reduces emotional volatility and increases stability. Resilience built in silence tends to last longer because it is internal. It does not depend on validation or recognition. It is not fueled by adrenaline or urgency, but by commitment. When pressure eventually arrives, as it always does, this kind of resilience does not need to be summoned. It is already present, conditioned by countless small decisions made long before the moment of testing. The quiet moments are where habits are formed and character is revealed. They teach patience, self-respect, and endurance. They prove that strength is not something you rise to on occasion, but something you practice daily. Long before resilience is visible in outcomes, it exists in effort that feels routine, unremarkable, and repetitive. That is where it takes root and begins to grow. Circumstances change constantly. They rise and fall, improve and collapse, often without warning. Identity, however, is what remains when circumstances shift. When people tie their sense of self to external conditions, success, status, approval, stability, they become vulnerable to every disruption. A setback then feels personal, not situational. A failure feels like a verdict, not an event. Choosing identity over circumstances is the decision to anchor who you are in values and character, rather than in outcomes you cannot fully control. Circumstances answer the question, what is happening to me? Identity answers the question, who am I regardless of what is happening? That distinction changes everything. When circumstances dominate identity, people react emotionally and impulsively. They chase relief instead of alignment. They make short-term decisions to escape discomfort, even when those decisions compromise long-term growth. When identity leads, response replaces reaction. You begin to act from principle rather than pressure. A strong identity creates internal stability. It does not eliminate hardship, but it prevents hardship from dismantling self-worth. When you know who you are, rejection does not erase value, failure does not erase capability, and loss does not erase purpose. You are able to say, "This is difficult," without adding, "and therefore I am weak." The situation may be unfavorable, but the self remains intact. Identity is built through conscious choice. It is shaped by the standards you refuse to abandon under stress. Anyone can act with integrity when conditions are easy. Identity is revealed when conditions are not. In moments of pressure, fatigue, or fear, what you choose to protect tells you who you are becoming. Each time you act in alignment with your values, despite inconvenience, identity strengthens. Each time you abandon them for comfort, it erodes. Circumstances tempt people to outsource responsibility. It becomes easy to blame timing systems, other people, or bad luck. While these factors are often real, over-identifying with them removes agency. Identity restores agency by shifting focus inward. You may not control the environment, but you control your response to it. That control, consistently exercised, compounds into confidence and self-respect. Living from identity also reframes adversity. Challenges stop being personal attacks and start becoming tests of alignment. Instead of asking, "How do I get out of this?" the question becomes, "How do I show up as myself in this?" This mindset reduces fear, because self-worth is no longer on trial. Only character is being practiced. The outcome matters, but it does not determine value. People who prioritize identity over circumstances develop a quieter form of confidence. They do not need constant reassurance, because their sense of self is internally validated. They adapt without losing themselves. They can change strategies without changing principles. This flexibility makes them resilient without becoming rigid, confident without becoming arrogant. Over time, circumstances often improve, not because they were fought aggressively, but because consistent identity-driven behavior creates trust, credibility, and momentum. Others may see success, recovery, or leadership. But what truly sustains it is the internal decision made long before to let circumstances inform actions, not define the self. Scars tell stories that words often cannot. They mark moments when something painful was endured rather than avoided, when damage occurred but life continued. Yet many people look at their scars, emotional, mental, or physical, and interpret them as proof of weakness or failure. In reality, scars are not symbols of defeat. They are evidence of survival. They exist because healing happened. If there had been no strength, no endurance, no refusal to give up, there would be no scar, only an open wound. Failure suggests an ending. A scar suggests continuation. It means something tried to break you and did not succeed. The experience may have altered you, but alteration is not the same as destruction. Often it is improvement in disguise. Scars reshape perspective. They make you more aware of limits, more respectful of risk, and more appreciative of stability. They represent knowledge earned the hard way, knowledge that cannot be taught through comfort or theory. Many people attempt to hide their scars. They smooth over the past, minimize their pain, or pretend resilience came naturally. But denial does not erase scars, it only delays understanding them. Owning scars requires courage. It means acknowledging that you were hurt without letting that hurt define you. It means recognizing that survival is not passive. It is active, demanding, and often exhausting. Surviving difficult moments requires choices made under pressure, when clarity is scarce and strength feels limited. Scars also change how we measure success. Instead of viewing life as a series of wins and losses, scars remind us that endurance matters. Progress is not always upward. Sometimes it is simply forward. There are periods when the greatest achievement is not collapsing, not quitting, not becoming bitter. These victories are invisible to others but deeply significant. Scars are reminders of those quiet wins. There is wisdom embedded in scars. They teach discernment. After being hurt, you learn where to invest energy, who to trust, and what boundaries are necessary. This does not make you closed off. It makes you intentional. Strength becomes selective rather than reactive. You stop proving yourself and start protecting yourself. That shift is not weakness. It is maturity. Scars also create connection. When shared honestly, they humanize us. They remind others that struggle is not unique, that pain is part of the human experience, and that recovery is possible. Leaders who acknowledge their scars inspire trust, not pity. They show that resilience is not theoretical. It has been tested. This kind of authenticity builds credibility because it is grounded in lived experience rather than perfection. The danger lies in mistaking scars for limitations. A scar does not mean you are fragile. It means you are experienced. It does not disqualify you from future challenges. It prepares you for them. When approached with awareness, scars become reference points rather than restraints. They inform decisions without controlling them. Ultimately, the winning mindset understands this truth: the scars are not reminders of what broke you, but proof of what failed to break you. They mark the distance between who you were and who you had to become in order to survive. When you stop apologizing for your scars and start respecting them, confidence shifts. You no longer chase invincibility. You stand firmly in resilience.